Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are, and welcome to NerdTube. It's a live stream here. I'm here with my mate, Luce Gary. How you doing?
I'm all right, pal. How you doing, Sam?
Fantastic, mate. We've both seen Dark Side of the Ring season 3, first 2 episodes, and we'll be talking about that today. It was about Brian Pillman, Flying Brian Pillman, also known as the Loose Cannon Brian Pillman. It was unfortunately, when it comes to the Dark Side of the Ring, this show itself, every episode is quite tragic regarding some of the life choices and some of the situations these wrestlers go through. And Brian Pillman, unfortunately, was no different. We've both seen this show, so I want to, before we start talking about elements of the show, Bossman, what did you think of the season premiere of this show, season 3's premiere?
Well, I thought it was really good because, again, like it's obviously a story I don't know because Brian Pillman, was in WWE, but being in all three major companies, I think he's like one of a handful of guys to actually do that. I think like it's only like him, Chris Benoit, Eddie Guerrero, Dean Malenko, Perry Saturn, and I think there's like maybe like what's his name? The franchise.
Douglas. It was Dean Douglas in Shane Douglas.
Yeah. I think Raven was in all three as well, and I think there's been some others as well, but he's like one of the most famous guys who did all three. Like, I literally did all three in a very short period of time.
Don't forget Austin.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Austin.
Rey Mysterio.
Well, Mick Foley and stuff.
Yeah, like that. We could go on forever. Actually, to tell you the truth. Yeah, Dudley Boys.
But I do think that he was the most famous because he was in a very short period of time that he went from all three. So, and I think that I think it got to explain to like why he ended up the way he did. That he was a very, a very like not destructive person. I don't think he's a very destructive person, but he was very, a very like went through the seat of his pants sort of person. I think that when you're like that, occasionally things get to you. So
yeah, he was he's one of those people who you don't know where the person begins and where the gimmick ends. That same phrase was used on Jake the Snake Roberts as well, regarding him. But let's go into some of his life now. I never knew this about Brian Pillman. I mean, he has a raspberry, husky voice, but that's quite common with a lot of wrestlers, in my opinion. They've all got, Macho Man Randy Savage being one as well, but I never knew that he had this sort of condition on his neck where he had to have surgery on his neck and he had to have like his vocal cords scraped, which was fucking unbelievable. To think that shit happened to him and that he wasn't able to talk. And Jim Cornette believed that because he wasn't able to talk for a period of time in his youth, that he believed that made him the more vocal person he is today. What do you think of that?
Yeah, because I think his sister talks about the fact that he had to, I think she said like something stupid like 12 different occasions had to have his tongue literally scraped because he was having these pull-ups on it, and if he was restricting his breathing and stuff, it's like holy God! I mean, compared to literally having that invasive procedure that young in your life.
As a child, yeah, man. Yeah, like going through that shit as a kid is terrible. So we saw that as he was growing up, and he wasn't the biggest dog in the yard, but he also said, it's not how that's phrase, but it's not how big you are, but it's how big the fight's in you or some shit like that, which is a common phrase amongst the Yanks. And he wasn't the biggest guy in wrestling. You could see the similarities. Hey, bandits. You can see the similarities in Shawn Michaels with him, which is why at one point, apparently, he was supposed to be a Shawn Michaels clone when he was about to go in the WWE. But there were definitely some similarities. But he didn't want to be your stereotypical, clean-cut, smiling baby face, which he was initially as Flying Brian. He wanted to be a fucking crazy bastard because he was a crazy fucking bastard.
Well, I think he wanted to be like an edgy face. And I think there's not, even now, there's not really that many guys I class as a quote-unquote edgy face. Because like the thing is that what he was trying to do was shock people. That he was trying to put people into situations where that they go, what the hell is he going to do next? But think that he's awesome while he's doing it. And I think that he sorry, he captured that when he was doing the whole, the whole loose cannon thing, because like but again, because he was just doing the Hollywood Blondes fighting Brian Pillman thing, his ceiling was always so high, and I think it's just a shame. So
no problem. Yeah. It was to a degree, and he, like a lot of it's funny in a way, because when I look back at wrestling and you see someone like Stone Cold Steve Austin, I could have never imagined in my wildest dreams that he would be one of the biggest names in wrestling of all time back then. I saw it from the perspective of Eric Bischoff, to tell you the truth. I saw it from the perspective of this guy would always be a mid-carder. But there he is, and it's amazing, hearing from Stone Cold in this biography of Pillman, how close they were. They were fucking tight. And it was interesting to hear from Stone Cold's perspective. He never wanted to be a tag team wrestler. He was looking to be going on his own and stuff like that. But he got teamed up with Pillman. And some of the things like he learned about Pillman, like when they were driving on the road, Pillman will be reading a fucking dictionary. He'll be reading a dictionary so he can learn some more words for his promos and stuff like that. And the fact that he was always calling Austin Kid because he's older than Austin. He's just I found a bit weird as well. You forget, that he was the younger person back then as well. But Austin's, obviously learned a bit from Pillman, and it was an interesting sort of relationship they had. How well do you remember the Hollywood Blondes, Bossman?
Very well, very, very well actually. Because when I first got into wrestling, I got into wrestling because a friend of mine had Sky at his channel, so I watched a little bit of WWE. But when I really got into it, it was more WCW, the Steiner Brothers, Sting, Vader, and the Hollywood Blondes, and even Buff Bagwell and Scorpio.
Like the Guerreros were there as well, man.
I can't remember him, but really? I can remember the Hollywood Blondes. I remember Too Cold Scorpio.
Oh yeah, Too Cold.
And Buff Bagwell. That'd be the team.
Ron Simmons was in there as well.
Oh yeah, he was champion when I get into it.
Lex Luger.
So he beat Vader for the strap. So that was the era. And again, Brian Pillman was in there. And again, I remember being drawn to him because he's very athletic. He's a pretty good looking guy. I'm not talking about in a gay way. I'm just talking like, he's very eye catching with the long blonde mullet he had at the time, and then he was very clean cut and stuff like that. But again, I never saw what we got from him, which was this more mannequinity until after he left. And I think leaving WCW was the best thing he could have ever done. Again, and there's loads of stories about how he left. Like there's a story that he was still under contract to WCW, but they gave him permission to go to ECW to get a bit of an edge on him.
Yeah. Now, because of who he is, and being the very good-looking guy that he is, he obviously got a lot of attention
for the ladies.
And he ended up fathering 3 children from 3 different women. Now, before I go on more about that, what was that thing regarding the ice pick and somebody stabbing somebody with the ice pick? Because who was that person they stabbed? Can you explain that to me?
I can't remember even. I remember it happening that he actually did that, but I think
he never did that. But somebody broke into his apartment and stabbed somebody he knew 7 times, including in the face. I thought it might have been his first wife.
I think he was his first. If it was his first wife, I think it was his first
girlfriend, maybe
his girlfriend. That was the mother to his first kid, I think, and then she.
Because the mother to his first kid, and it was later on. I think it was in the second season. Sorry, the second part. But his mother of the first kid, she blew her fucking brains out. Because she lost custody to the kids. We felt, but regarding some of the women there, like we never saw one of the women. We never knew about her at all. But the person he ended up marrying, like what you saw of her back in the day and what you see of her now, like she's totally fallen apart. And obviously the toll of Brian Pillman dying at an early age would do that to you. Your husband dying for sure, but It was tragic seeing her the way she looked, man. It really did. She was fucking.
But Melanie, I mean, because the thing is,
Yeah,
like,
Melanie, yeah.
Yeah, because like she turned out that she was a stripper, and that Brian met her like in some place in like I think it was like Cleveland or some place in Ohio, and like and just like got with her and had I think he had 2 kids with her.
No, he's only had 1 kid. He's got 1 kid from, he's got 3 kids and all from a different person.
Yeah, I think Brian Jr.'s his son with her.
Yeah. Brian Jr. came from her. And he never even knew, like when he came to what he thought was his first daughter, he never realized that he had a daughter before. And I think that was the person who maybe got stabbed. I'm not sure, but let's not go into that too much. But his life as being a playboy definitely had a toll on his personal life. He was also at the same time trying to create his gimmick now of this crazy fucker, because he would no longer wanted to be the pretty boy. He wanted to move up the card. He wanted to get noticed. And he was doing things, which wasn't in the script. He was going against the script, like when he was fucking with Bobby Heenan.
Bobby Heenan goes, "What the fuck are you talking?" Yeah, because the story about that was that Bobby Heenan had his net fucked up by Warrior doing that grill slam on him. So I think he had like a notice on him that you're not really supposed to touch him because you could hurt him and stuff like that. So when he touched him, he was like, "What the hell are you doing?" and stuff like that. And like he really that was his like honest reaction that they caught on camera. And the thing is that when that started happening in WCW, Eric Bischoff basically said to him, "Look, you need to go somewhere else to get big, so that when we bring you back, you're even bigger." And that's what happened. Like they basically were still paying him, but they shipped him off to ECW to make it.
Well, that's what Eric Bischoff says. Maybe he's trying to save a little bit of face. You never know. So
it could be, but again, that has been the story out there.
Yeah, well, he's obviously planning now to go into WWE and work for Vince, WWF back then. The Hollywood Blondes are split up. I don't know what Austin's doing with himself, but he's ready now. And apparently when he's going to the arena, he fucking crashes his car. And I heard the story, but he said that he talked about it himself, like how he flew out the windscreen, but he wasn't wearing his belt. And,
he went out of the windscreen, landed on the.
No, but he also said that the hood of his car popped up and he pierced the hood of his fucking car like a bullet. It's unbelievable, yeah. And
how the guys have had that, I do not know.
Well, he is, he's not a regular. Being a wrestler, you're not like a regular human being, are you? You're pretty tank. You're a pretty tanked individual. I mean, you take bumps for a living, and I think maybe that his conditioning to a degree saved him more than a regular person. But he fucked up his leg big time, dude, which would play a prominent part in his latter years as a wrestler. And it was really unfortunate, that this guy who had, he was like a mastermind, he was like a fucking Baron Zemo, playing both sides against each other and getting the best deal for himself. But unfortunately, it fell apart with that fucking car crash. And it took him a long time to fucking recover. This is a bit like Dark Side of the Ring really explained it to me to this more, to me, all this shit to me more, because I just remember Brian Pillman being in the WWE in a fucking wheelchair, always on crutches and stuff like that. I just thought it was an injury. I never really knew how bad it was. And his career was never the same after that. I mean, when you found out about the injury, what are you thinking, boss man?
Well, again, look, I'd seen that before when he had that metal thing in his leg. I didn't know that it was causing him that much irritation, because the thing is that he, Jim Ross was trying to help him at every stage. And the thing, you can only help somebody so much. There's got to be some way where they choose to meet you, where they help themselves as well. And I think that you can tell from what he was saying and what Jim Cornette was saying, they both cared for this fella. This guy. They obviously saw that he was a great talent, that he knew the business, that he cared about the business, and he was talented.
But sorry, go on.
No, I was going to say he. I just said when that happened, it was just like he was on a rocket ship because the ECW thing had happened and he was starting to get really really well known and then and then he described how he wanted to get into the ring and then Stone Cold Steve Austin kicked the shit out of him. I think that was
that was for because he wasn't healing and quick enough. They scheduled him to come back at a particular time. It wasn't going to happen, so they needed to kayfabe a way of keeping him on the bench longer. So they had obviously Stone Cold, who was a heel at the time. Sorry, he was Stone Cold back then, wasn't he? He was when he did that shit. He was Stone Cold Steve Austin. So yeah, he did that for the Heat, and Brian Pillman took it. But Brian Pillman also had an opportunity to be a commentator, and he thought it was beneath him, and that's really sad because he could have been like a Jesse Ventura. In that sense, but Jesse Ventura's wrestling career got cut short, and he ended up being a commentator for a big period of his time in wrestling. And even if he wasn't wrestling full time, he could still come back for the odd match, just to maybe sell tickets and stuff. Like somebody calls him out while he's seating, gives him a match, and he goes back to fucking commentary again for about 4 or 5 months before doing another match at SummerSlam or some shit like that.
I think what he should have done is kept doing that until he's body rehabbed and then come back.
But he was too egotistical, unfortunately.
Well, I don't think he's egotistical. Just that he thought that
he was
being on the sideline was not doing what he should be doing because he wanted to do
but sometimes he had to realize that he would you see your fucking leg and it's got bloody bolts in it. He had to realize what was best, and what was best was not getting back in the ring, but this opportunity as a commentator was probably the next best thing. And he got blinded by delusions of grandeur that he could be the old Brian Pillman again, and that was never going to be the case, dude. Never ever. And it's a shame. It's a shame that he persevered with this way of thinking, because I think it also led to his death, which is unfortunate. We have Cousin Cheeto in the chat. Let's have a look here. I didn't know much about Brian Pillman. I mean, it's funny in a way. Like when I first saw him, Cousin Cheeto, I saw him as a smiling baby face on NWA wrestling and stuff like that.
Well, the only thing that I wish that they did include was his run with the Heart Foundation, because I thought that was apart from the loose cannon stuff, that was one of the best things he did.
I'm very happy you brought that up, because he studied under Stu Hart. He studied in the Hart Dungeon. He's a Canadian, isn't he? Is he a Canadian?
No, it's from Cincinnati.
Okay, fair enough. But
he went up there to
he went up there and he studied the art, and so he obviously was always going to learn the technical skills, and having a bad will like he did, and being flying Brian Pillman, it was always going to affect him as a wrestler, and it's a real shame. And then it came to the Bad Blood pay-per-view, which he was supposed to be attending. And by the way, before that, he was getting back into matches once his leg healed to a degree, but it just wasn't the same. It just wasn't the same. And then obviously we come to the situation with him and his wife, one of his wives, his first wife, who blew her brains out because she lost custody of the kids, and the sort of guilt he felt from that. His daughter, she has no love for her stepmom. Obviously, it's a little bit different for Brian Pillman Jr. because that's his fucking mum. But, those are the situations they have to deal with as a family, unfortunately. But then him dying, and this is the funniest thing, I never really knew how he died. That was the most bizarre thing. And it was basically heart disease. I thought he might have killed himself. Come to think of it, he might have done a bit of a Kurt Cobain or something along those lines. But no, it was just heart disease. All the medication he was taking, and back then in the 80s and early 90s and so on, the late 90s, still then, they weren't maybe doing the right thing medically necessarily. Things like steroids were just seen as like fucking taking paracetamol. So, his downfall was, I think, some of the medication he was taking, whilst being obviously really badly hurt. Obviously, Stone Cold mentioned that if the car crash never happened, God knows what sort of career he would have had. And funnily enough, Bossman, he died the same day as the birth of my niece's birthday, and Owen Hart died on the 23rd of May, which is my fucking birthday. What's the fucking chances of that?
Pretty low.
Yeah, pretty low.
But I would say, like as I said, the thing that was pretty hard to listen to in the thing is when they said what happened after he died, and then like his wife has got to try and look after 3 kids, 2 of which aren't hers, as you were just saying, and like he basically she got overwhelmed.
Yeah,
and again, like and WWE was about as much help as a
did you see that disgrace of an interview by Vince?
Vince. I was going to mention that. That was
disgusting.
ridiculous.
Vince McMahon, man. That's why I can't condone WWE. I can't watch it, but I don't want to endorse somebody who's a fucking cunt. And that man is Vince McMahon, and he saw his cut, but he was selling that interview. Oh my god! You look back at it now, you just think to myself, what were you thinking, Vince? What were you thinking, man? Just face. Just put my hands on my eyes, just thinking about it. Disgrace. Sorry, boss man.
No, I was going to say because the thing that I remember about it was just like when he threw that interview, and she literally said to him, "Look, I just don't want you to talk about drugs." And what's the first fucking question he asked? So, how do you feel that he's been on pain medication? And like literally, like, you can tell from his reading, like she's trying to not react.
It's not just that as well. Vince is already laying it down that this isn't my fault, because this was like as well like the beginning. I'm not sure if it was the beginning, but maybe it was. But this was like the beginning of a long list of wrestlers who started dying at a young age, and Brian Pillman was one of the first, and he was still in his 30s. I mean, what the fuck is a muscle-bound beefcake, athlete like this, regardless of his injuries, dying of fucking heart disease? Like, come on. And unfortunately, so many wrestlers have died at a young age. That's why we've got a show like this, like Dark Side of the Ring, but there's so much tragedy around it, and so much of it is connected to Vince McMahon. He's got his hand, whether he's directly involved or indirectly involved, he's involved in some capacity. And it's a shame. It really is. But this show does end. Sorry, go on, boss.
So like as the show goes on, like Brian Pillman Jr. talks about how his like asshat of an ex stepdad, like was abusive to the 3 kids, and how Brian
smashed his GameCube. The fucker, man, smashed his GameCube.
Yeah, but I had literally had a dog outside his door that would bark at him, that would bite him and stuff like that. So I was like, what in the actual hell? And then it was his sister who adopted him basically and said, "Look, I'm going to give you a home and we'll look after you," sort of thing. And it's just like, and you can tell that the pain of losing contact with the kids has been hard for his widow. You can tell it in the way that she talks and the way that that she has a lot of pent up bad feeling about it.
It's also fascinating hearing from Jim Ross, because this was like the first time I've really heard him badmouth the WWE. I know he's done it before, but like blaming them for the death, or to a degree, and not really. He used his words well, and he wasn't trying to disguise his words as well, but he was kind of blaming them. And
I think the person he blamed most was Brian, because he said that literally he said, "Look, I wish that I could have reached him and said, look, your career as you had it is over. You can do this now. This is your new career. This is what you can do. I'd still be successful. I'd still make money out of." I was thinking, yeah, because the thing is that I'd watch Brian Pillman be color commentator. I wish he was a color commentator now.
Yeah,
I mean, the thing is that because that's the thing that you've got to think about, Zam. I mean, like, I don't know how long ago you watched Raw or anything like that, but when the guy opposite is a professional wrestler, you kind of lose that guy who knows what he's talking about.
Yeah,
and you get that spark. You got a guy who's never done it with a guy who has.
Well, we do I mean, yeah, I mean, like the kids growing up without Brian Pillman in their life was really tragic. Actually, I was really shocked to hear all of that. You know, like this guy was a really abusive bastard, but you know, that was Melanie as well.
Not
Like,
Brian Pillman, but he's the stepdad.
yeah, it's Brian Pillman's stepdad. Yeah, he was the guy who replaced Brian Pillman basically in their lives, and Melanie herself. I mean, like, I'm just maybe jumping to conclusions, but she looked a little bit junky-ish. And I never knew that her and her son actually fell out. I kind of starting to remember this now. I never knew that they fell out, but it was nice to see them like reconnect at the end.
Well, I think, as I said, it's because of the stepdad that she let the stepdad get away with that crap.
Yeah. It was right, but it's pretty cool having an uncle in Stone Cold Steve Austin for Brian Pillman Jr. Because Brian Pillman, it's funny in the way when Brian Pillman tells me he wasn't a wrestler, Brian Pillman Jr. was when he's talking about himself and he's saying he's not a wrestler, he's a gamer. I'm thinking, I'm looking at him, I'm thinking to myself, Jesus Christ, mate, you look huge. And then I find that he is a wrestler later on in the show. I mean, you probably know that as you watch AEW.
Yeah, because he works in AEW at the moment.
Yeah, is he good on AEW?
Yeah, I like him.
You think he's got a decent career ahead of him?
I think he's just got to work on like some elements, but I think if he works on the promo element and works on character, he's got a great look. As I said, he's got with the beard and the long hair.
Being a Pillman helps as well, I guess. You know,
and plus he's got the athleticism of his dad. I mean, as I said, if AEW booking gets better, I think he's one guy that they should definitely focus on.
Fair enough. I mean, yeah, but you know, if WWE get their hands on him, they're gonna go full on dad. And all that's
why I'm hoping he never goes there. The certain people that I hope never go to AEW, he's one of them, because they'll saddle him with some stupid.
You mean WWE?
You mean WWE? Yeah. They'll saddle him with some stupid gimmick. Like I'm trying to think, like instead of the loose cannon, it'll be like the dangerous Deadeye or something like that. It'll be something like that. It'll be some like derivative of the loose cannon gimmick, and to say like you're doing this, it'll be something stupid like that. It's like no, he needs to be his own person.
Well, he has. Sorry, go on.
Because like the best person I've ever heard talk about this, and this is before he passed, was Rocky Johnson. He talked about Dwayne. He says, I took him to wrestling, and he says, well, your dad does this, and your dad does that, and your dad does this. And he stopped, literally, he said, Dwayne stopped them. He said, look, he's Rocky Johnson, I'm Dwayne Johnson. We're two different people. Stop it. Yeah. And literally, and from then, he was off to the races because he knew he had to be his own person.
He still just got a bit of his dad, like all that fucking people's elbow. I mean, that's a bit of fucking soul, man, if I come to think of it. But nevertheless, he's it's a tiny bit. He's not like he's going full on. And I totally understand that. And I'm happy that Pillman is paying more homage than being a fucking clone of his dad as well. Pillman Jr., that is. And, you know, I want to also give props to Pillman's sister. I mean, she's become like the grandma, the second mum, so to speak, to her nieces and nephews. You know, keeping them together, making sure all three of them. The one with the short hair, I really didn't get to know her that much, but nevertheless,
the one is the one he had from a girlfriend before he met his.
That's his. Wife. Yeah, that was his eldest daughter. But it was good to see all three of them connect and stuff like that. You know, sometimes with the Dark Side of the Ring, it doesn't really necessarily end with happy endings, but there was happiness at the end of this. Like there was so much tragedy before, and the only way is up, and the families are all reconnected. Pillman Jr. is, you know, continuing in a better vein than his father. He's not losing himself by the sounds of things. You know, he's obviously learned.
He's got a decent head on his shoulders. You can
well, and like I said, when you got someone like, you know, Stone Cold Steve Austin as your uncle, and, you know, when I say uncle, not like biological, but he might as well be, because Stone Cold Steve Austin said himself that Brian Pillman was one of his best friends. And that's a fucking big statement, yeah. So he's pretty much like an uncle to him, as well as working under Jim Ross, who will definitely mentor him for sure, like a grandfather. He's in good hands, you know. I'm sure, you know. And excellent. What a great way to start this show, by the way. I love this. I love the Dark Side of the Ring, boss man. I really do. It's a show which is about tragedy, but it's just done so well with so much respect. It's really good to hear Chris Jericho commentating on this shit. Fucking love it.
Well, the thing is, what I like the most is when there's like a good redemption thing at the end of it, like when we had the Christopher Benoit episode when we found out that Nancy's sister and Chris's son from a different relationship from his first marriage, had reconnected and had become really close. It's through AEW and stuff like that. It's one of those things where, through this horrible thing that happened, that's what it was just really, really, good to see, that happened.
Yeah, I agree. There was the one about obviously Owen Hart, and she didn't connect with the Hart family, which is unbelievable because the Hart family was standing by Vince, even though it was Vince's, stupidity that led to Owen Hart's death. His negligence. That's the word I'm looking for. That led to Owen Hart's death. Yet they stuck by Vince and the WWE in general because that was their meal ticket, and it's a real shame. But at the end of that episode, it was good to see that people like Natalia was connecting to her cousin, Martha's kids and stuff like that. So there was some reconnection there and stuff like that to a degree. Because regarding the kids of these legends like Natalia, like Harry Smith as well, they've got nothing to do with it, and it's good to see that they're still connecting with their cousins. Just give me a second.
You muted me.
Sorry about that. Okay.
Sure.
So let's wrap this up. Anything you want to say, Bossman, regarding this show?
As I said, I thought it was a really good first 2 episodes, and I think it's just really sad. I think that's what it should be, because if he didn't have the issues he had, how big could his ceiling be? Because everyone was saying he could have been the next Rock. He could have been the next Stone Cold. He could have been
more
the next
like I think more like Shawn Michaels, but he would not necessarily the next, but he would have been working alongside those guys. He would have been working alongside Austin. Imagine the feuds they would have had because of their friendship, and obviously working with Rock, and him and fucking Shawn Michaels would have been a dream match. Did they ever wrestle? I'm not sure.
I don't know. I mean, I know that they had him wrestling certain people. I can't remember him wrestling him again.
He would have wrestled Kurt Angle. Oh my God, Jesus Christ. Eddie Guerrero. Oh my God.
Those would have been great. As I
Benoit.
said, what I hoped would have happened, and this is just me. This is just because I'm a WCW mark, is that he would have gone back. I reckon what had happened after ECW and he wouldn't have had the accident. I reckon he could have gone back to WCW, been a big star there, and just took off. Because the thing is that the NWO was just coming in. And I think he could have been another person with Sting, with DDP, with Goldberg, who against those. Because, but because he's a bit crazy, people couldn't trust him, but he always had a good heart on him. And you could use that sort of, loose cannon persona to go against them. That even the NWO are scared of this guy.
Well, his career could have gone so many directions. I mean, I'm sure you would have had face turns and God knows what if that car crash never happened. But we'll never know. But, it's been fantastic talking to you about this, Bossman. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I really look forward to the next episode. I believe that'll be coming in a few days. I forgot who it's about, but this show itself is so interesting. Even when it comes to wrestlers I know nothing about, just learning about their stories and some of their lives and what sort of shit they went through is fascinating in its own right. All right. So thank you very much, Bossman, for joining me. Thank you very much, everyone else, for watching us. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe to NerdTube, and we'll see you later for the next video. Bye-bye.